Dispatch, we are 1097. Driver, keep your hands where I can see them.
Officers, thank God you're here. He's been squatting for months. I tried to be patient, but I'm scared for my safety.
Step off my property, Diane. The words came out steady, but my hands weren't. The heat shimmered on the blacktop, and her Lexus blocked half my driveway like a silver wall of arrogance. She stood there in those spotless white sneakers, sunglasses perched high, arms crossed like she was addressing a disobedient employee instead of a homeowner. "Your property?" she said, the smirk cutting like glass. "You mean the unsightly patch of weeds violating Section 8B of community standards?" I took a slow breath. Riley was behind the screen door, holding the trowel we'd been using to plant milkweed for butterflies. She didn't need to hear this. "It's not your community, Diane. It's mine. Always has been." Her voice went high and brittle. "Not anymore. You've ignored every notice, every warning, and after today, you'll regret it." She slapped a folded orange paper against my chest, hard enough to sting. Final violation. I looked at the paper, bold red letters. Non-compliant property. She had no authority, no jurisdiction, but the way she held that clipboard, you'd think it was the Constitution. "You don't get to enforce anything here," I said. "I'm not in your HOA. Her laugh came sharp and fake. "That's not how this works. We'll see what the county says." She turned on her heel, the smell of her perfume mixing with the hot tar and dust. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just a petty neighborhood argument. It was war. I remember standing there, watching her taillights disappear down Pinecrest Road, feeling something settle in my chest, cold, steady, electric. I'd spent months trying to stay polite, trying to ignore the petty notices taped to my mailbox, the glares, the whispers. But Diane had made it personal. The next morning, an orange sticker was plastered across my truck's windshield again. Big red letters. Violation. No city seal, no legal notice, just her trademark intimidation. I peeled it off with a razor blade, the sound of adhesive tearing louder than my thoughts. The smell of citrus cleaner burned my nose. Riley watched from the porch, her small voice trembling. "Daddy, why does the mean lady hate our flowers?" I didn't have an answer that wouldn't make her cry. 6 months earlier, I thought I was finally starting to breathe again. "My name's Max Brennan, 43, electrician, widower, and full-time dad to a little girl who still sleeps clutching a stuffed rabbit. My wife Jenna had been gone for 18 months, ovarian cancer, stage 4, before we even knew it was a fight. 7 months from diagnosis to goodbye. 7 months of hospital antiseptic, waiting room silence, and prayers whispered into vending machine coffee cups. The house she left me, the one her father and grandfather built, was the only thing that didn't crumble. A 1,970 seconds ranch on 2.5 acres, right where the city gives up trying to look like a postcard. My grandfather's will made sure it stayed in the family. Paid off. Solid ground. I thought that meant safety. Turns out, safety's an illusion when your neighbor wears a smile and carries a bylaw. Meadowbrook Estates' neat rows of pastel houses with perfect lawns and identical mailboxes. People paid $1,200 a year just to be told what color to paint their doors. The HOA was their religion, and Diane Kressler was their self-appointed high priestess. She'd been president for 6 years, re-elected every time because nobody wanted to deal with her. Mid-50 seconds, fake tan, designer everything, the kind of woman who turned volunteer authority into divine right. She also happened to be the ex-wife of Lawrence Kressler, the developer who built this whole suburban empire around my grandfather's stubborn patch of land. Back in '98, Lawrence tried to buy the Brennan property. Grandpa told him he could pave a road around it for all he cared, but he wasn't selling. So, they did build the entire subdivision in a perfect ring, leaving our house like a defiant island in a sea of beige conformity. Legally, we weren't part of the HOA. It was written right into the deed, county recorded, immutable. But Diane didn't care about legal. She cared about control. It started small letters about my grass being unsightly, my work truck, detracting from community standards. I ignored them. Then came the escalation. Phone calls to the county about unpermitted work, septic violations, imaginary code breaches. Doug Simmons from County Enforcement came out one morning, clipboard in hand, tired eyes that had seen too many neighborhood feuds. He spent an hour walking my property, checking permits, testing soil. Finally, he sighed and said, "Mr. Brennan, I'll tell you something off record. We get 3 or 4 of these complaints a month, all from the same person, Meadowbrook's HOA president. Maybe it's time someone files harassment." That night, I dug through county records. Found 11 homeowners who'd faced the same nonsense. 8 sold their houses within 6 months. Every single sale listed by Hartman Realty, Diane's company. That's when I realized she wasn't just a bully, she was running a racket. I met Reggie that Thursday night at the VFW, old buddy from our National Guard days. The smell of fried catfish and stale beer filled the air. He's a paralegal now, sharp as a tack, mean at trivia. I laid out the whole story. He scribbled notes on a bar napkin. "Tortious interference," he said, chewing a fry. "She's using HOA power to push people out and profit. You can sue her, but first you document everything." So I did. Every sticker, every call, every blocked driveway. Photos, timestamps, license plates. I even started wearing a body cam when I worked outside. It wasn't paranoia, it was survival. 3 days later, Diane herself showed up again. Clipboard, sunglasses, necklace that could buy a week's rent. "Mr. Brennan, your non-compliance is unacceptable," she began, that condescending tilt of her chin. I smiled. "And your authority doesn't extend past the property line. You're trespassing." She took a step closer. "I have the full support of the HOA board." "Good," I said, "because you're going to need all of them in court." That's when she laughed, the kind of laugh that makes your skin crawl. "You think you can win against me? I've run this place for 6 years. I know everyone at City Hall." I stared her down, feeling Jenna's wedding band cold against my palm. "Then I guess you'll get to know the county recorder's office next." She drove off again, tires spitting gravel like punctuation. I stood there until the sound faded, the Missouri heat pressing on my neck. Inside, Riley was coloring butterflies in her mother's garden journal. "Can we plant the purple ones tomorrow?" she asked. I nodded, smiling for her sake, but my chest felt heavy. By midweek, it escalated again. Someone guess who blocked my driveway with bright orange traffic cones. No markings, no permit, just petty vengeance. I moved them by hand, threw them in the bed of my truck. 45 minutes late to a client meeting. Lost an $8,000 contract. The same day, Riley's carpool driver, Diane's friend, forgot to pick her up. She sat an hour alone at gymnastics until I raced there, still in work boots. That night, Riley whispered from her bed, "Daddy, would it be easier if we lived somewhere else?" I wanted to say yes, but I remembered Jenna's last words in the hospital. "Promise me." Riley grows up knowing we don't run from bullies. So I didn't run. Instead, I started digging deeper. I sent a certified letter invoking Missouri's Sunshine Law HOA records, financials, minutes. Legally, they had to comply. 3 days later, Diane herself showed up to deliver the denial. "Attorney-client privilege," she said sweetly, like she'd already won. "That's not how the law works," I told her. "Then take it up with our attorney." She turned away, paused. "Oh, and move your truck. It's blocking the street." It wasn't. The next morning, my tires were slashed. All four. $4,500 in damage. I stood there, staring at the shredded rubber under the porch light, the air thick with gasoline and fury. The security camera caught a shadow at 3 a.m. Hood up, body small, stride unmistakably feminine. Diane. The police filed a report but shrugged it off. No face, no case. That's when I realized law and justice aren't the same thing, so I built my own kind of case, one file at a time. Photos, texts, timestamps. 17 pieces of evidence in a neat folder. Reggie looked through it 2 nights later, whistled low. "You've got her dead to rights, but you'll need a lawyer who doesn't scare easy." He gave me a name, Mara Desmond. property attorney, reputation for dismantling crooked HOAs. We set a meeting. I remember sitting on my porch that night, wind chimes moving in the dark, thinking how absurd it all was that a widow's garden could start a war, but this wasn't about flowers anymore. It was about control, greed, and one woman's obsession with power. And that's where the story really begins. Because the next morning, I was no longer just some electrician with a bad neighbor. I was a man with proof, a plan, and a folder that could burn down her entire empire. And when I walked into Mara Desmond's office that Wednesday, leather-bound law books behind her and that sharp look of someone who's seen too much, I knew one thing: I wasn't playing defense anymore. Mara Desmond's office smelled like old paper and expensive coffee, the kind of scent that makes you sit up straighter. She was mid-40s, sharp navy suit, no wasted movements. The kind of person who read contracts the way a surgeon reads x-rays looking for tumors. I laid my evidence folder on her desk. 17 documents, laminated tabs, dates in red ink. "I like a man who color codes his outrage," she said without looking up. Her pen scratched quick notes, red against white. "You're an electrician, right? Commercial. 20 years. Then you understand structure. Diane's harassment isn't random. It's a pattern built to collapse on command." She turned her monitor so I could see the spreadsheet she'd been working on. County financial data. My stomach dropped. Meadowbrook Estates HOA owes $340,000 to the developer, she said. Balloon payment due in 4 months. Reserve fund is $90,000. They're short by a mile. I blinked. They collect over $150,000 a year. Where to go? Her finger tapped the screen. Consulting fees, landscaping, management, all fake companies registered to the same address Diane's real estate office. It was like watching a circuit blow. All the flickering weirdness suddenly made sense. Every violation, every sticker, every rumor, camouflage for embezzlement. "She's been stealing from her own community," I said slowly. Mara nodded. "And using HOA power to chase out families who complain. It's textbook self-dealing. Illegal in Missouri. But here's the real shocker. If that balloon payment isn't made, the developer can foreclose on the HOA itself. Pool, clubhouse, everything. So the houses still belong to homeowners," she cut in, "but the amenities become collateral. The HOA collapses. Whoever owns the debt controls the wreckage." I leaned back, pulse heavy. "You think she knows? She's the one who deferred the payments. Probably thought she could charm her ex-husband into forgiving the note." Mara's smile was thin. "Lawrence Kressler holds the loan. He's not sentimental. That night, I couldn't sleep." The idea kept looping. Diane stealing from neighbors while pretending to protect them. Riley sleeping down the hall, her mother's journal on the nightstand. I promised Jenna we'd build something that mattered. Maybe this was it. 5 quiet days passed. No new violations, no orange stickers. I almost convinced myself the police report scared her off. Then, on August 16, at 10:30 p.m., red and blue lights exploded across my garage. I'd been sanding the dollhouse I was building for Riley's birthday, the one Jenna had designed in her sketches. The smell of wood glue and polyurethane hung thick in the air. I stepped outside into sirens and floodlights. 3 cruisers boxed my driveway. A young officer rested his hand near his holster. "Are you Max Brennan?" "Yeah. What's this about? Report of trespassing. Possible squatter situation?" For a second, the words didn't make sense. "I own this property." The cop looked unconvinced. Behind him, Diane stood on the curb in yoga pants and a North Face fleece, pretending to tremble. "Officers, thank God you're here," she said. "He's been squatting for months. I tried to be patient, but I'm scared for my safety. It was surreal. My house, 20 years, paid in full, and she was telling the police I didn't belong in it." She handed them a stack of papers, a forged lease, an eviction notice on fake letterhead, even my name spelled wrong, Brennan with 1 N. "Do you have proof of ownership, sir?" "In the kitchen drawer." The walk from my driveway to my own house felt like a funeral march. Neighbors lined the sidewalks, phones out, recording. Through the window, I saw Riley's sunflower curtains lit by her nightlight. Thank God she wasn't home. Inside, I pulled the deed, title insurance, tax receipts, 20 years of proof. Sergeant Kowalski, the senior officer, checked everything against the county database. Finally, he turned to Diane. "Ma'am, this man owns this property outright." His voice was calm, dangerous. "These documents you provided will need to discuss false reporting." Her performance cracked. "That can't be right," the title company said. "Ma'am, you need to leave now." She did, face blank, lips trembling. After the cruisers rolled off, I stood in the driveway shaking. Then Herb Vance shuffled over old guy. 3 houses down, Korean War vet. He'd avoided me for months. "That was bull," he said, voice like gravel. "She told us you were cooking meth in the garage. I should have known better." I just nodded, too tired to be angry. At 11:47 p.m., my phone buzzed. Text from Lisa Cho saw everything. Half the neighborhood did. "We're done with Diane." I sat in Riley's empty room that night, the smell of her lavender spray still in the air. My daughter had asked to stay with her grandparents because she didn't feel safe here. I stared at her stuffed rabbit on the pillow and called Mara's office, leaving a midnight voicemail. "I want to sue everything. Let's end this." Diane didn't back down. She detonated. By sunrise, Lisa sent me screenshots from the HOA Facebook group. Diane's post showed telephoto pictures of my yard red circles around the wildflowers, the truck, the peeling paint on my garage door. The caption read like propaganda, "Shaken after Tuesday's incident." Attempted to discuss violations. Resident became threatening. "Please avoid contact. Our property values must be protected." 89 comments in 3 hours. "Thank you for keeping us safe. This is why we need our HOA." Lisa corrected the lies. Her comment vanished. Herb tried. He got banned. By noon, the post had spread to 3 other community groups. Diane added a line about unlicensed contractors, me. At 1 p.m., my phone rang, the downtown renovation client. We'd been negotiating for weeks. "Max," he said carefully, "we've received some concerning calls about your professionalism. Licensing issues, I guess." My stomach dropped. I sent over every document, license, insurance, 20 years of references. He sounded reassured but cautious. "We'll proceed, but please keep your name out of the news. One more call like that, and I'd be done." That weekend, Reggie and I turned my dining room into a war zone of paper. Diane had dumped 14 banker's boxes of HOA records on my porch, technically fulfilling my sunshine law request, practically useless. Water damaged, out of order, chaos. Reggie brought 2 law students, promising pizza and beer. We spent 11 hours sorting, the air thick with musty toner and caffeine. Somewhere between box 9 and 10, we struck gold. Violation reports targeting 5 families, all single mothers or minorities. Meeting minutes where Diane proposed aesthetic standards to eliminate undesirable elements. Financial ledgers showing $60,000 paid to her own LLCs. Consulting, administrative, landscaping, all inflated, all bogus. Then, a handwritten note on Hartman Realty letterhead. Once we clear the holdouts, Meadowbrook becomes 100% compliant premium community. Working 3 problem properties now. Listings by fall. Commission split. Reggie snapped a photo. "Intentional scheme," he said. "That's civil fraud." "Criminal?" I asked. "Maybe. Need the Attorney General for that." I was halfway through box 1-2 when my doorbell rang. No one there, just a manila envelope, no return address. Inside, a USB drive and a typed note. "She did this to my family too. Use it." A friend. Reggie and I plugged it in together, hearts pounding. 2 folders. First, emails. Diane coordinating with realtors to lowball targeted homeowners, even bragging to her ex-husband. "The Brennan in holding costs us premium pricing on every sale. I'll handle it." Second, loan papers. HOA owed $340,000 to LK Development Holdings. Balloon payment due in 4 months. I leaned back, dizzy. "So, That's Lawrence's company? Reggie nodded. Her ex. The same guy your grandfather refused to sell to. A pattern older than me, greed wrapped in suburban niceness. Mara's office smelled of stress and triumph when we brought it all in Wednesday morning. She clicked through the files, expression tightening. This isn't harassment anymore, she said finally. This is conspiracy to commit fraud, possibly RICO. I exhaled. So we sue? She folded her hands. Question is, do you want to sue her or dismantle her entire system? For a moment, the room felt too small. What do you mean? The HOA's broke. Balloon payments due soon. If they default, the developer forecloses and takes everything. But if you buy the debt, you become the developer. You own the leverage. I blinked. You mean I'd own the HOA? She nodded. You'd control the very system she weaponized, use her own greed against her. How much would that cost? Distressed debt sells cheap, maybe $200 to $100,000. I stared at the wall clock. My throat tightened. I have $185. Jenna's life insurance, Riley's college fund, my retirement. Mara leaned forward. It's risky. The sale could collapse. You could lose everything. But if it works, you don't just beat Diane, you erase her power entirely. Driving home, I replayed Riley's question. Daddy, would it be easier somewhere else? Maybe it would. But Jenna's voice haunted me. We don't raise our daughter to run from bullies. That night, I opened the file cabinet, pulled out the insurance papers. $185,412. Typed into my phone's calculator, the numbers felt heavier than bricks. At 9:30 p.m., I found Lawrence Kressler's name on the loan documents. His number was still active. I hit call before I could think. Mr. Kressler? Speaking. His voice was calm, worn, maybe a little curious. My name's Max Brennan. I live in Meadowbrook Estates. I believe you hold a note against the HOA. Silence stretched for 5 seconds. Then, so you're the guy with the inholding. Diane complains about you at every closing. I'd like to buy your note. Full debt. Cash. Long pause. Then, let's talk. And just like that, the war changed shape. It wasn't about orange stickers or violation letters anymore. It was about power, who built the system, and who finally pulled the plug. When I hung up, the house was quiet, except for the hum of Riley's nightlight down the hall. I looked out at Jenna's wildflower garden, the purple coneflowers glowing faintly in the porch light, and whispered to the dark, she wanted control. Now she'll learn what it's like to lose it. The battle had stopped being personal. It was strategic, and I was done playing defense. Panera Bread wasn't the battlefield I expected for a war over half a neighborhood. The place smelled like burnt coffee and buttered bagels, mid-afternoon quiet except for the hum of refrigerators. Lawrence Kressler sat in a corner booth by the window, sleeves rolled up, reading a paper menu like he had nowhere better to be. Late 50s, clean-shaven, salt-gray hair, expression tired instead of cruel. This was the man Diane had called the developer king. You're not what I expected, he said, shaking my hand. Diane paints you as a squatter with anger issues. I smirked. Guess we both know her marketing is creative. He laughed softly, a dry sound. So you want to buy a worthless HOA's debt for $340,000? Not worthless, I said. Just mismanaged. You want out. I want leverage. His eyebrows lifted. Straight to the point. I like that. He sipped his coffee. Diane told me you were trouble, the kind of guy who refuses to mow his lawn out of principle. I leaned forward. She slashed my tires, filed fake police reports, and called CPS on me because I wouldn't join her kingdom. She's not a leader. She's a tyrant. He studied me for a long second, then smiled faintly. That's Diane! Lawrence leaned back, stretching like the weight of memory was a physical thing. She's been pulling this since our marriage. Find someone who doesn't fit her image and grinds them until they move. You're the first one who fought back. He stirred his coffee. You really want to buy my note? Every cent, I said. $340 is the balance. How much you offering? I swallowed. $185 cash. Everything I have. He chuckled, not cruelly. You're lowballing me, but at least you're honest. You know this note is in default, right? The balloon payment was due 9 months ago. Means you can foreclose whenever you want. Already started, he said quietly. Sent the notice 60 days ago. Diane signed for it herself. My pulse spiked. She knows? Probably tossed it thinking it was junk mail. The sale's scheduled September 28th, 3 weeks from now. He smiled, not like a businessman, but like a man watching justice finally balance out. You buy this note before then, you become the one holding the gavel. It hit me like a live wire, the kind of voltage that rearranges everything. Why help me? I asked. He looked out the window. Because she told our kids I was abusive during the divorce. Took years to prove otherwise. She cost me my reputation, my friends, half my business. Hugh wiping that smug look off her face at a public sale? Worth every penny of the discount. What discount? $160,000. Cash. Close in 19 days. That was 40 grand less than I had. I didn't breathe for a second. Done. We shook on it. Just like that, the most important deal of my life sealed over cold coffee and 2 stale bagels. As I left the cafe, sunlight hit the window just right, and for a second, I saw Diane's reflection instead of mine, smiling that smug, perfect smile she used to hide behind HOA bylaws. Soon, she'd be watching me hold the hammer. The next 19 days blurred into paperwork and adrenaline. Mara's office became war command. Fax machines whined, printers hummed. Reggie lived off energy drinks. I drained 4 accounts: life insurance, savings, retirement, emergency fund. Every dollar I'd promised to Riley's future turned into a weapon. Mara triple-checked every signature. Foreclosure's public, she said. If Diane's smart, she'll realize what's happening by next week. Expect chaos. I nodded, though inside I was shaking. At night, I'd sit on the porch with Riley's rabbit in my lap, wondering if I was building a legacy or lighting a fuse. September 22nd, 3 p.m. Sharp wire transfer confirmed. $160,000. By 4 p.m., the county recorder's office stamped the assignment of debt. I owned Meadowbrook Estates' future. When I walked out into the sun holding those papers, my hands trembled. Toner smell. Warm paper. Irrevocable proof. Jenna's insurance was gone, but for the first time in a year, I didn't feel powerless. I called Reggie. It's done. Jesus, he said. Does Diane know? Not yet. She'll find out soon. Then I'm bringing popcorn to the courthouse. We both laughed, but under it was fear, the kind you only feel when there's no way back. That weekend, my dining room turned into a command center. Mara, Reggie, Doug Simmons from Code Enforcement, Lisa Cho, and old Herb Vance all squeezed around my table. Coffee cups, pizza boxes, stacks of files. Riley stayed with her grandparents again. I didn't want her anywhere near this storm. Goal? Mara asked. Fix the system, I said. Not become the next tyrant, Herb nodded. That's the right answer, son. Mara drew a flow chart on a whiteboard. Foreclosure sales September 28th. Courthouse steps. Special Commissioner will auction off the HOA's common property pool, clubhouse, playground, 15 acres total. Anyone can bid, but Max has an advantage. She turned to me. You can credit bid. Means you use the debt itself as payment. No cash needed. You show up, bid $340,000, and win automatically unless someone brings real money. Lisa grinned. So he can outbid everyone with paper? Exactly, Mara said. Credit bidding's the nuclear option. Diane can't compete unless she raises the full amount. Doug rubbed his chin. She'll fight it. She'll do anything to stop that sale. Mara nodded. She has 3 plays. 1. Call an emergency assessment to make homeowners cover the debt. 2. File an injunction to block the sale. 3. Smear campaign. Maybe all 3. Lisa looked up. She's already started number 3. Facebook's on fire. Lisa opened a folder she'd brought, printed flyers, clean layout, simple language. Diane mismanaged HOA funds. Diane filed false reports. Max isn't your enemy. I've got 42 neighbors willing to hand these out, she said. Young families hate the fees. Retirees hate conflict. We can flip them. Doug slid another paper across the table, a letter to the county commissioners. Documents every bogus complaint she's filed, suggests an official investigation that protects you from retaliation. Reggie added, and it builds a record for future sanctions. Paper trails win wars. We stayed up until midnight, planning logistics. Coffee went cold, markers squeaked against the whiteboard, tension thick enough to chew. When they finally left, Mara lingered. You understand you could still lose everything? She asked quietly. If the sale fails, if she challenges it, if there's a title defect, I know. And you're still doing this? I looked at the photo of Jenna and Riley on the mantel, both covered in dirt from planting that first garden. My daughter asked if we should move because a bully scared her. I'm not teaching her that running's the answer. Mara smiled faintly. Then let's win. 3 days later, Diane found out. Someone must have tipped her off, maybe Lawrence, maybe a county clerk, but the explosion came fast. Tuesday morning, she called an emergency HOA meeting with 48 hours notice, violating bylaws that required 2 weeks. Subject line, critical financial matter. By Thursday evening, 87 homeowners packed the clubhouse. Normally, they got 20. I stayed home on Mara's advice. Let her self-destruct in public. Lisa recorded everything. From the footage, I could smell the panic. Diane stood at the front in a power blazer, clicker in hand, a PowerPoint glowing behind her. Saving our community. She spun the story like a pro. Unexpected legal expenses, miscommunication with the developer, external threats to property values, not a word about her embezzlement. Then came her pitch. To preserve our amenities, we must act decisively. I'm proposing a special assessment of $3,000 per household, due in 2 weeks. The room erupted. Young families shouted they couldn't afford it. Retirees on fixed income yelled back. Someone cried. Lisa's voice cut through the chaos. Diane, show us the financial records. How are we broke when we collect $150,000 a year? Diane blinked, smiled too wide. We can review that later. This is time sensitive. No, said Herb Vance, standing slow but steady. We review it now. Every eye turned toward him. 89 years old, World War II veteran, voice clear as thunder. I've seen the documents Max provided through legal channels, he said. You've been stealing from your neighbors for years. The room fractured, shouting, people demanding answers, others defending Diane, chaos spilling into the hallway. Someone slammed a chair. Diane grabbed her laptop and fled through the side door. In the parking lot, Lisa handed out the packets we'd prepared, proof of fraud, emails, even a copy of Lawrence's letter confirming the debt. People exchanged numbers, forming a resistance. The war was public now. That night, someone vandalized my truck again. Not slashed tires this time. Paint stripper poured across the hood, bubbling through the finish down to the metal. $1,200 repair. The next day, an anonymous complaint hit the Missouri Licensing Board, claiming I was doing unlicensed electrical work. Completely false, but enough to trigger a review. 2 clients froze contracts. 15 grand gone overnight. Friday was worse. Child Protective Services showed up at my door. Anonymous report. Daughter frequently unsupervised, unsafe environment. The investigator, Emma Torres, was professional but kind. She toured the house, checked the fridge, tested the smoke alarms. Riley's room smelled like crayons and innocence. When she left, she said quietly, Mr. Brennan, this report was clearly malicious. I'll close it immediately. Off-the-record document who might have filed it. You may need a restraining order. After Riley went to bed, I sat in the dark, whiskey glass sweating on the table. For the first time, I considered quitting, selling the house, leaving Missouri. Reggie showed up uninvited, same bottle in hand. You're 3 weeks from the end, man. She's desperate because she's losing. She called CPS on my kid. I know. That's how you know you're winning. He poured 2 fingers each. You quit now. She wins forever. And she'll do it again to someone else. My phone buzzed, unknown number. Text from Lawrence Kressler. Heard Diane called CPS on you. Even for her, that's low. I have her deposition transcript from our divorce. She admitted to filing false complaints against homeowners. You can use it. Attached PDF. Black and white proof under oath. I sent it to Mara. Her reply came fast. This is evidence of conspiracy to commit fraud. We're not in civil territory anymore. I looked up at Riley's window, soft yellow glow against the night. She just made her last mistake, I said. Reggie frowned. What mistake? She went after my daughter. I downed the rest of the whiskey. Now it's not about beating her. It's about making sure she can never do this to anyone again. 10 days to the foreclosure. Diane filed an emergency injunction Monday morning, claiming the debt transfer violated notice requirements. Court hearing set for 2 p.m. Judge Patricia Reeves. 60 sharp, no nonsense. Diane arrived with high-priced counsel. Gerald Hutchkins, $400 an hour, silk suit. I sat with Mara and Reggie, feeling like I'd stepped into a chess match where every piece was alive. Hutchkins began smoothly. Your Honor, the assignment of debt was invalid. My client had no opportunity to cure default before transfer. Mara rose, calm as ever. Your Honor, the HOA received 3 certified notices over 18 months. Mrs. Kressler personally signed for each. The balloon payment was due last December. They've been in default 9 months. Judge Reeves adjusted her glasses, glanced at the receipts. Counselor, your client signed for these? Yes, but... Then motion denied. Sale proceeds as scheduled. Gavel crack. Outside, the media swarmed. Cameras, microphones. Diane went full martyr. One man's vendetta is destroying our community, she cried. A reporter cut in. Mrs. Kressler, what about the allegations that you paid your own companies $60,000 in HOA funds? She froze mid-sentence, lips still parted, eyes darting to Hutchkins. No answer, just silence. I didn't speak. Mara whispered, Let the sale speak. That night, Diane launched a slick website, SaveMeadowbrook.org drone footage, stock music, her crying on camera, claimed I was a corporate investor seizing homes. A lie, but fear spreads faster than facts. GoFundMe link, $14,000 raised in 3 days. The local news ran her story Wednesday. 5 minutes of tears and lies. Then the reporter called me. I didn't go on camera, just sent documentation. Mara's strategy. Don't fight her image. Replace it with truth. By Thursday evening, the same station aired a follow-up, HOA president accused of harassment and fraud. They interviewed families. She'd driven out a single mom buried under 53 violation notices, an interracial couple fined for unsightly landscaping, an elderly widower threatened during his wife's chemo. The story flipped. Public sympathy shifted overnight. Still, Meadowbrook turned into a war zone of yard signs. Save Meadowbrook versus reform, not revenge. Friends stopped speaking. Parents avoided each other at school pickup. Riley came home crying. Daddy kid said, You're stealing the pool. I knelt, hugged her tight. I'm not stealing anything, baby. Some people made mistakes. I'm fixing them. Why do they think you're mean? Because the person who made those mistakes is lying. But lies don't win forever. Truth just takes longer. She looked up with Jenna's green eyes. Will it be over Friday? I smiled. Friday, I promise. That night, Mara called. When you win the sale, the HOA board technically still exists until you dissolve it. Diane will fight every step. Homeowners will be scared, confused. You'll need to hold an open meeting Saturday. Explain your plan. Be gracious. Even to the ones who hated me, especially them, she said, give them a way back. That's how real leadership works. I hung up and stared at the ceiling. My heart was hammering. Every risk, every dollar, every sleepless night came down to tomorrow. 3 a.m. Couldn't sleep. Went outside. The September air was cool, filled with cricket songs. The wildflowers glowed pale under the moon. I thought of Jenna, of her quiet strength, of the way she'd press my hand during the worst nights in the hospital and whisper, You're stronger than you think. Tomorrow, I'd prove her right. because by this time tomorrow, I wouldn't just be fighting the HOA, I'd own it. The morning of September 28th hit like a live wire. The sky was the color of bleached steel, the kind of gray that makes everything feel heavier. The courthouse lawn was already filling up when I parked 4 blocks away. Reporters setting up tripods. Homeowners clustering in nervous huddles. Yard signs and hashtags had turned into real people, now neighbors, former friends, some glaring, some curious, all waiting for blood. I wore clean jeans, work boots, and the shirt Jenna once called my lucky blue. No suit, no performance. I wasn't here to pretend to be something I wasn't. I was here to finish it. Reggie spotted me halfway up the steps, coffee in hand. Grin, tired but steady. "You ready?" "No," I said. "Let's do it anyway." At the top of the limestone stairs stood Mara, calm as always, clipboard against her chest. The special commissioner, Walter Grimm's 70-something gray suit, courthouse legend, was arranging papers on a small folding podium. Around him, half of Meadowbrook stood watching. And then Diane arrived. You could hear her before you saw her, the quick staccato of heels on stone. White suit, gold jewelry, hair, immaculate. Flanked by 5 board members like she was entering a campaign rally, Gerald Hutchkins trailed behind, expression flat but worried, cameras swiveled like sunflowers chasing light. "This is heartbreaking," Diane began, voice trembling in practiced rhythm. "One man's greed is destroying 127 families' dreams. We offered settlement. He refused. He's not saving the community. He's dismantling it. Every word polished, rehearsed, fake." Someone in the crowd shouted, "Tell us about the 60 grand you paid yourself." Laughter rippled. Cameras turned. Mara whispered, "Don't engage. Let the sale speak." 10 a.m. Sharp. Grimm raised his gavel. Foreclosure auction for the assets of Meadowbrook Estates, Homeowners Association, Common Grounds, Clubhouse, Pool, Playground, Landscaping, Parcels, total debt, $340,000. He glanced at me. "Opening bid?" I raised my hand. $340,000. "Credit bid?" The crowd murmured. Grimm nodded. "Credit bid accepted. Any other bidders?" Silence. Diane's voice cut through. "I object," Grimm sighed. "Ma'am, this isn't a courtroom. No objections in a foreclosure sale." She turned to the crowd, desperate. "You're letting a stranger steal your homes," an older man yelled back. "You already stole from us, Diane." Grimm lifted the gavel. "Going once. Going twice." A woman's voice cracked, one of Diane's allies. 500,000! Grimm didn't even look up. "Unregistered bidder. Invalid. Going 3 times." The world held its breath. "Sold," he said. The gavel came down. The sound echoed like a gunshot through marble. 4 a.m. I owned the HOA. Diane went rigid, like someone had pulled her power cord. Then she snapped. "You've ruined everything. Do you have any idea what you've done?" I turned slowly. Every camera lens locked on us. "I bought a debt your board refused to pay. That's called accountability. Thought you loved the free market." She stepped closer, eyes wild. "You planned this. You never belonged here." I pulled a folder from my jacket documents, notarized and stamped. "This is my title deed, recorded in 1998. I was never part of your HOA. I flipped another page. These are emails from your ex-husband showing you harassed homeowners to drive sales. You made $340,000 in commissions, the same amount of debt you refused to pay." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Reporters jostled for angles. "And this," I held up a final sheet, "is the police report from the night you had me handcuffed in my driveway, and the CPS file from when you tried to weaponize child services against me." Cameras flashed. Diane's face went pale. A reporter shouted, "Mrs. Kressler, did you falsify police reports? Did you embezzle HOA funds?" She froze, blinking, her smile cracking at the edges. For once, she had no words. Then, from behind the crowd, a man stepped forward, Lawrence Kressler. I hadn't known he'd come. He looked at her, voice low but carrying. "I gave him those emails, Diane. You did this to yourself." Her face cycled through rage, fear, disbelief. "This isn't over," she hissed. But everyone knew it was. She stalked to her Lexus, slammed the door, and sped away. Half her supporters followed. The rest just stood there, caught between loyalty and relief. Mara touched my arm. "Congratulations, you just dismantled an empire built on HOA letters." Reporters swarmed as we left the steps. "Mr. Brennan, what's next?" I kept it simple. "We're restructuring Meadowbrook to serve everyone fairly. No fines, no harassment. Community meeting tomorrow morning at the clubhouse, open to all." A deputy approached, handing me a stack of papers. "Mr. Brennan?" "Yes?" "You've been served. Civil suit. Diane Kressler versus Max Brennan. $2 million in damages." I laughed out loud. "Of course." Mara skimmed the first page, smiling thinly. "Nuisance suit. She's trying to stall discovery. Will counterclaim malicious prosecution, defamation, fraud. This will end her career." A reporter overheard. "So you're suing her back?" I looked right into the camera. "I'm fixing a broken system. But if she wants to keep fighting, I'm happy to let a jury decide who the real villain is." That night, Meadowbrook was restless. Facebook threads split families. Driveways buzzed with whispered debates. But, for the first time, people were talking without fear. Lisa texted at 11 p.m. "Potluck tomorrow, after your meeting. We'll bring food. People need hope, not just paperwork." Saturday morning, the clubhouse was packed, standing room only. 140 homeowners record attendance. The air smelled like brewed coffee, donuts, and something electric. I stood by the podium, papers trembling in my hands. "I didn't do this to be anyone's king," I said. "I did it because this system was hurting people. That ends today." Murmurs quieted. Effective immediately. No more architectural violations. No more mandatory fees. The pool, the clubhouse, the playground, they're community property now, open to all. Gasps, then whispers. Then applause. I explained the new structure, Voluntary Neighborhood Association. "Contribute if you can, help if you're able. County code handles real violations. The rest, we handle like neighbors." One man raised a hand. "What about property maintenance? Standards? Common sense," I said. "Keep your place clean. Respect others. Nobody's fining you for mailbox colors anymore." Herb Vance stood again, cane tapping the tile. "We forgot what community means. You just reminded us." The room erupted into clapping. By the end of the meeting, 118 voted for the new structure, 9 against, 13 abstained. Over 70% signed the voluntary charter before leaving. When it was over, people lined up to shake my hand. A single mom hugged me, crying. "I thought I'd have to move. Thank you," a young dad whispered. "I finally feel like we live somewhere worth staying." For once, nobody looked scared. Sunday afternoon, Riley came home. She ran from the car straight into my arms, her stuffed rabbit tucked under one arm. "Is it over, Daddy?" I smiled. "Yeah, baby, it's over." The tension that had hung over Meadowbrook for a year lifted like fog, burning off under sunlight. Kids played outside again, neighbors actually waved. The wildflower garden became a meeting spot. People planted alongside us, mothers, retirees, teenagers digging, laughing, sweating under the September sun. The smell of mulch mixed with blooming coneflowers. Even the air felt different. That night, I sat on the porch watching Riley chase fireflies. The sound of kids laughing carried through the street. A white Lexus drove by slow Diane. She didn't stop, didn't roll down her window, just looked once at the garden she'd tried to destroy, then disappeared around the corner. For the first time, I didn't feel anger, just peace. Weeks passed. We turned the HOA building into a real community hub. Monthly food drives, tutoring nights, open barbecues. The Meadowbrook Credit Union Clubhouse sign went up after they bought naming rights for $25,000. That money funded the Jenna Brennan Memorial Scholarship, $10,000 a year for local students in healthcare or teaching. Mara's idea. Riley's name on the first certificate. Membership climbed fast, 89 families the first month. Donations paid for pool maintenance and new playground mulch. Nobody missed the old regime. Even property values rose. Realtors started advertising. Meadowbrook Estates, a reformed community with optional association. People wanted freedom more than control. 3 months later, Diane's lawsuit quietly disappeared. She'd filed bankruptcy after the state revoked her real estate license. Word was, she moved 2 counties over, selling timeshares under a different name. I didn't celebrate. I didn't need to. The system corrected itself. Meadowbrook became a model. 2 other Missouri neighborhoods followed our blueprint. News crews came back, filming smiling homeowners instead of police lights. Riley even gave a small interview, clutching her rabbit, saying, "My daddy fixed our neighborhood. I couldn't have scripted it better." One crisp December evening, we held the first Winter Lights night. Dozens of homes glowing in color, kids sipping cocoa, old Herb dressed as Santa. Mara and Reggie manned the raffle table. Emma Torres, the CPS investigator who'd once inspected my house, showed up, smiling shyly. We'd been talking more. As the crowd sang carols around the clubhouse, Riley tugged my sleeve. "Mommy would like this, wouldn't she?" I swallowed hard, watching the twinkling lights reflect in her eyes. "She'd love it, baby. Every part of it." Later, after the crowd thinned, I walked through Jenna's wildflower garden dusted with frost, each plant dormant, waiting for spring. I realized it wasn't just a garden anymore. It was a promise something ugly turned into something living again. That night, I sat at the kitchen table with a notebook open, scribbling plans for next year. Scholarships, volunteer days, rebuilding projects. Riley padded in wearing pajamas. Sleepy smile. "What are you doing, Daddy?" "Making sure what we built stays strong." She nodded, curling into my lap. "You beat the bad guys." "Yeah," I whispered, kissing her hair. But only because of the good ones who helped. Through the window, the lights shimmered across the yard, the same porch where a year earlier I'd watched police lights flash and wondered if everything was over. Now, it was just peace and quiet, and the hum of life returning. That's how Meadowbrook changed from a war zone to a neighborhood again. How an HOA that thought it could crush me ended up teaching everyone what community really means. But deep down, I knew it wasn't just about laws or debts. It was about legacy, Jenna's voice, Riley's courage, the stubborn refusal to let someone else write our story. Some nights, when the wind moves through the coneflowers, it almost sounds like her whisper, "You did good." And every time I whisper back, "We did." Spring arrived slower that year, but when it did, it came like forgiveness. Riley and I knelt in the wildflower garden, pulling winter mulch from the soil. Her hands, smaller than the trowel, dug carefully where the coneflowers had once stood. The air smelled of damp earth and new beginnings. Every time I looked up, I saw the neighborhood alive again. Kids riding bikes, couples walking dogs, no one glaring or taking photos anymore. For the first time in years, I could breathe without checking over my shoulder. Meadowbrook had survived the storm, and somehow, so had we. I'd expected victory to feel like fireworks. It didn't. It felt like calm, like the hum of distant traffic and the sound of Riley laughing. The HOA that once ruled by fear was gone, dissolved into a voluntary association where decisions were made by handshakes and Saturday morning coffees instead of threats. The mailbox that used to hold violation letters now overflowed with invitations, bake sales, park cleanups, school events. People had remembered how to talk again. Mara stopped by one afternoon, wearing sunglasses and that half grin she saved for impossible cases turned miracles. "You're the most famous electrician in Missouri," she said. "You realize that?" I poured her coffee, still half in disbelief. "I didn't fix the world, just a few acres of it." "That's where fixing starts," she said. "You didn't just win a lawsuit, you changed a system. Most people don't get that far." I thought about that a lot, how one war over lawn colors and bylaws had turned into something bigger. Freedom, responsibility, Community words I'd stopped believing in until we earned them the hard way. That night, I looked through Jenna's old journal again. Between pressed flowers, she'd written a single line years ago. We plant things knowing we might not see them bloom. That's what faith is. Now, finally, the flowers were back. By summer, the voluntary association had grown to 96 families. Pool open, community calendar full, the place buzzing again. We added a neighborhood library, free tool exchange, and monthly cookouts. Riley called it the New World. Even local news came back for a follow-up story. The neighborhood that fired its HOA. They filmed the garden, the pool, the laughter. No courtrooms, no gavel, just people choosing decency. Diane never showed her face again. Her bankruptcy and revoked license had made sure of that, but sometimes at dusk I'd see a white Lexus on the county road, always slowing near the entrance, never stopping. Maybe guilt, maybe just curiosity. Either way, she was gone. Lawrence sent a Christmas card that winter. Thanks for finishing what I couldn't. Inside was a photo of his grown kids, both smiling with him again. He'd gotten his life back too. I kept working business better than ever. Contractors called. Jobs rolled in. Turns out, being the guy who beat the HOA was good for referrals. I hired 2 new apprentices, both kids from local trade school. And then there was Emma Torres, the CPS investigator. She started volunteering at the community tutoring nights. We talked over paper plates of barbecue and lukewarm lemonade. One evening, after the crowd thinned, she smiled and said, "So, how's life after chaos?" I laughed. Still weird hearing silence. She nodded. That's what peace sounds like. It wasn't a movie moment. It was just 2 people who'd seen too much, finding comfort in normalcy. But sometimes normal is exactly what you fight for. Riley grew fast that year. She joined soccer, started writing stories about heroes who fixed broken places. Her teacher sent me a note. She has her mother's heart. That hit harder than I expected. Every milestone reminded me of Jenna, the way she'd hum while baking, her stubborn optimism even when chemo made her too tired to stand. Losing her had hollowed me out. But somehow, through all of this, I felt her guiding us, not through miracles, but through grit. One Saturday, Riley and I visited Jenna's grave. The grass was thick, sunlight warm. We left fresh coneflowers, the same kind from the garden. Riley brushed dirt from the headstone. Mommy would have been proud, huh? I knelt beside her, my voice catching. Yeah, baby, she'd be proud of both of us. For the first time, saying it didn't hurt, it healed. 6 months after the sale, the Meadowbrook HOA no longer existed in any official record. What replaced it was better, flexible, human. The Jenna Brennan Scholarship Fund awarded its first recipient, a girl from the next county studying nursing. Riley helped present the check. Afterward, Mara, Reggie, and I had coffee at the community park. Reggie joked, "So what's next, Governor? You've reformed local government. Might as well run for office." "Not a chance," I said, laughing. "Paperwork's enough politics for one lifetime." Mara raised her cup. To beating broken systems the legal way. We clinked mugs. That night, I realized how rare that is, not just winning, but winning without losing who you are. The next year passed quietly, almost suspiciously so. No police lights, no violation notices, just life. Riley made honor roll. The garden bloomed wider than ever. Neighbors stopped by to chat or borrow tools. The silence left behind wasn't emptiness, it was space for living. Every once in a while, new families moved in. They'd ask about the neighborhood's famous story. I'd smile and tell them it wasn't fame, just persistence. Just people deciding they'd had enough of fear. When I'd finish, they'd usually ask, "So how'd you do it?" And I'd answer the same way every time. Document everything. Stand your ground. And never let anyone convince you that kindness is weakness. On the first anniversary of the foreclosure, we held a neighborhood barbecue. Over 200 people showed up. Food trucks lined the street. The mayor came. The news station, too. Riley handed out lemonade wearing a shirt that said, "No Karen Zone." I gave a short speech under the same oak tree where Jenna once planted the first wildflowers. This isn't about revenge, I told them. It's about rebuilding something worth keeping. When the crowd applauded, I looked up at the sky, and for a moment, it felt like she was there. Jenna, watching the chaos she'd left behind, finally bloom into peace. That night, after everyone went home, I sat on the porch with Riley, asleep inside. The air smelled like grilled corn and night jasmine. The stars looked brighter than they had in years. I whispered to no one, "We did it, honey. We made it through." Months later, an envelope arrived. No return address, just my name written in neat cursive. Inside was a single page. "You were right. I went too far. Tell Riley I'm sorry." No signature, but I knew the handwriting. Diane. I folded it once, then again, and placed it in Jenna's journal. Some things don't need answers. Some stories end quietly. Because peace isn't about forgetting the war, it's about not needing to fight anymore. That night, I walked outside. The crickets hummed. The wildflowers swayed in the breeze. Somewhere behind the house, a porch light flickered. And for the first time in a long time, it didn't make me think of sirens or police flashers. Just home. If you're listening to this, maybe you've dealt with an HOA like mine. Maybe you're still fighting one. So here's what I learned. Don't let fear make you small. Document everything. Learn the rules better than the people who use them against you. And remember, every system, no matter how corrupt, depends on people believing it can't be changed. You change it by standing up, even when your knees shake. You don't need money or power or lawyers at first, just truth. And the patience to let truth do its work. That's what saved us. Not anger, not revenge, just the slow, stubborn belief that decency still matters. So yeah, that's how a widowed electrician, a 9-year-old kid, and a garden full of wildflowers ended up owning an HOA and turning it into a neighborhood again. The papers called it a local revolution. I just call it redemption. If you've got your own HOA horror story, drop it in the comments. Maybe someone out there needs to know it's possible to win without becoming what you hate. And if you believe broken systems can be rebuilt by ordinary people, hit that subscribe button, because next time, we're going to talk about a property line dispute that led straight to buried mob money. You won't believe where that one goes.